it's like a complete loop that you have completed. I started from culprit, came back to culprit.
I don't need to do that because I don't need to know the formula. But if I understand the concept, that's more than enough. And so far, I've not really had to go ahead and memorize the formula of A minus B equals something.
Or do I need to be super good in maths?
Got exposed to SQL. And I didn't know anything about it. Obviously, from a non-tech background, everything was a little overwhelming for me. I didn't know what to do. But I think we're all surrounded by so much data that some way or the other, it comes into your life, no matter what. And no matter what function you're performing, that data does seep. Culprit was like, hey, why don't you come work with us as a product analyst? I use ChatGPT almost every day now. And I think the fear is justified. I think it's understandable. You have a system that remembers all the syntaxes. It understands all the technicalities. But we had one small thing which was related to Excel. That is mostly rostering, where we place the trainers. And that was kind of interesting for me because Excel was a very new piece of tool for me. No one taught us in MBA how to read.
Hello Abhilash, how are you?
I'm good. How are you so much?
I'm doing great. So Abhilash, since most of us or none of us knows you right now, so can you quickly introduce yourself, your background? As you have told me, you were from BCom background. So from there, then your journey till cultivate, how it happened.
Right. So, like you already said, right? Like I'm completely from a non-tech background. I did my graduation from BCom, then I did my postgraduate in MBA. After MBA, we had placements that came into college, and that time Cultfit happened to be one of the companies. I joined in the operations team that time, and at that time, I was working mostly in the West Cluster of Bangalore, which is Chandra Layout, Nagarbavi, etc. Right? And over there, the thing is, mostly in operations, what happens is you have to be quick on your feet. So over there was not a lot of things related to data, but we had one small thing which was related to Excel. That is mostly rostering, where we place the trainers. And that was kind of interesting for me because Excel was a very new piece of tool for me. No one taught us in MBA how to really use Excel. And then I was fascinated by the formulas. But then that was a little short-lived because COVID came up. And then after that, I had to transition, move into Arzu. So Arzu is kind of like a B2B company. It's in the e-com industry. There I got in as a product marketing lead. Now here, again, I got exposed to data. But instead of Excel, I also got exposed to SQL. And I didn't know anything about it. Obviously, from a non-tech background, everything was a little overwhelming for me. I didn't know what to do. But there was one analyst there, and I kind of kept trying to learn from this person. Now, once that phase only lasted for about 7 months, and I got an offer from Crejo.fun. So it's an edtech company. Now, when I got an offer there, it was a 0 to 1 startup. So there was very few people. I think I was the 15th employee, if my memory serves right. When I got in there, I again got in as an operations manager. But once I got in there, they didn't have an analyst and they had a lot of data flowing in. The only problem is engineers are technically enabled and they are able to talk about all of these data pieces, right? But then they didn't have enough time. So then I had a friend, his name is Adi. So he helped me write the first SQL query because I was just curious what it is. When he wrote the entire query, I was so fascinated by it. I said, no matter how long it takes, I'm going to understand every single line of this query. So I sat for about more than a week, learned from YouTube videos, went online, tried to understand what is a table, how do I get data from it. And I think over the course of the next 3 to 4 months with some learning, my founders were also super impressed with how I was able to extract data. So they asked me to create more queries, more dashboards. And it was so much fun for me because I immediately got that feedback that, hey, I'm doing a good job. And that continued along. Then, unfortunately, the company wasn't able to go forward and PhysicsWala kind of acquired the company. And there I stayed for a very short span of time, about 2 to 3 months. I finally moved on to Finbox, where I was recruited as a product analyst. And for people who don't know, Finbox is like a fintech company in the B2B space again. There again, I was exposed to data. I was using things like Redash. I just kept getting more and more curious. And finally, I decided to move on from Finbox and come back to Cultfit. And Cultfit was like, hey, why don't you come work with us as a product analyst? Here, I think, again, there was a lot of learnings. I learned SQL. I learned how to create models. I kind of got into the entire data engineering side as well. So now, I mean, if you ask me to write a query, I think I can close my eyes and write it. But it took a lot of time, but a lot of self-learning also.
Great. So it's like a complete loop that you have completed. I started from culprit, came back to culprit, but in a different way, in a better position, and with a lot of different kind of learning and experience that you have gathered from working with all these companies.
Yeah.
Great. So Abhilash, I will start with few general questions that most of my students always ask me.
Sure.
Since you share a very similar background with the most of the students who are right now struggling to get the job.
Okay.
So, as per your experience in the entire journey, coming from a non-technical background, that to BCom, how you faced, or what was the difficulty level you faced in the entire shift
Okay.
from non-technical to analytics? And as a student and those who are listening to us, do you have any suggestions for them based on your experience?
Right. So how I would phrase this entire thing is, I never decided that I want to be an analyst. I never decided that I want to get into data. But I think we're all surrounded by so much data that some way or the other it comes into your life, no matter what. And no matter what function you're performing, that data does seep in. So I think I was also very fortunate that when I went into this company called Creator.fun, right? There, I think I was exposed to a lot of data. I was always exposed to some parts of it, but there I think I got like a playground to play. So when I got exposed to data, it was a struggle for sure because I was already doing operations. Plus now I have to look at data and kind of figure out, I have to upskill myself. So there were a lot of relentless nights. There were times where, but the thing is, it doesn't feel like a lot of effort today or even at that time. The reason is because I was so curious, what is going to happen? If I do this, what happens? If I do that, what happens? And because of that, I used to try to go through various YouTube videos. Today I would feel like while the learning is fun, it was a little inefficient because I felt like there lacked a structure. So a lot of things I learned as I kept experimenting. I would have been able to write better queries, maybe analyze data a lot better if I would have been able to structurally learn something. So I think that transition was a good thing because in the company, the founders believed in me, people around me believed, and they wanted me to explore data more. So, but what I would say is that structured learning was missing. So maybe I took a lot longer to learn.
So basically, one thing that was always with you was your curiosity.
Yes.
And one thing that you struggled with was the structure.
Yes.
So, keeping these two things in mind, what would be your suggestion to the viewers who basically shares a similar background like you?
Got it. So in such a case, right, what happens is when you lack structure, you don't know where to start and where to stop. What is supposed to be applied where? And that's the same thing which I was struggling with, right? What I would suggest is try to go for some kind of course, right? And I don't mean something very fancy. Don't go to the top institute. It's not necessary to do that. What I would rather recommend is see if you can find your interest there first. And then see if you can go from the very basics. Because when I started from the very basics. And then immediately I jumped to something very advanced. That I just knew how to write select star from some table. And then I moved on to window functions. I didn't understand window functions and I got confused. And so I started slowing down my learning. But what I would suggest is when you start from maybe a course online, maybe a course offline, maybe go to some institutes or learn from friends also, right? What happens is there's some form of structure. And what I would always suggest anyone is when you're learn from a certain structure, it can be a little less exciting because you're not practically doing something. But trust me, it goes a long way because you learn from root what to do. And of course, my transition was a lot easier because my founders believed, my people in the same company believed in me. People I worked with really saw the value in me creating these dashboards. So it's difficult for someone to take a bet on you. So what you should ideally try to do is in the company that you're working, in the current role you're working, it can be a non-technical role. That's perfectly fine. Try to see if there are opportunities for you to leverage data in some way. Maybe it can be creating dashboards on Excel. Maybe it can be creating dashboards on any BI tool like Power BI, Petabase, Redash, whatever it is. But trust me, when you try to do that and you prove value in that company, then if you try to transition into that role within the company, great, you're already proving yourself. But in case it's outside the company, right? Like, why would they take a bet on you? If you've proven yourself already, then there's a less risk. And hence they would be willing to give you that opportunity.
Correct. Very true. Like I most of the time I meet students who say that right now I'm basically working in some different field and I'm not able to transition even though I have completed a course. The reason is because they are not experimenting what they have learned in their current role. And that is what you did. You started experimenting the things that you were learning and then you were doing it simultaneously. And that's how you were able to learn and then you were able to prove that I can do it. That's great learning. So, Abhilash, the second most asked question that I get from students is, do I need to learn maths or do I need to be super good in maths? I don't know maths, I have a fear of maths. So in your case, coming from BCom and then doing MBA, what was your take in this? How difficult was it for you to balance it out?
Correct. So this kind of reminds me of some of the lectures I used to have when I was in school. I think maths and science in general are just very boring subjects for me. I didn't like it as much. I didn't even like statistics. And then I did BCom where it was not a very strong requirement. And then I went to my MBA. They started teaching statistics again. The truth is, I think some of the things that I've learned here, like at least the basics and the fundamentals, those are important. Like, for example, obviously, everyone can do 2 plus 2. If you want to grow in math, that's perfectly fine. But do you need it as an analyst? Not necessary. You have formulas, you have you have great coding, not coding experience, rather I would say you have a lot of tools that already help you do this much more easily. What I would rather say is sometimes you just have to apply those things. So let's say, for example, I understand correlation, I understand linear regression. Now, these things, I don't need to do that because I don't need to know the formula. But if I understand the concept, that's more than enough. And so far, I've not really had to go ahead and memorize the formula of A minus B equals something. Rather, I just conceptually understand it and then I just go ahead and try to do that on Excel. Excel already has a lot of these functions. And I just understand what does it mean? What is the result or the interpretation on this?
So basically, knowing maths is not important, but understanding maths is important. Okay, great. So Abhilash, the next most commonly asked question that I get is the fear of coding and the fear of not coming from a computer background.
Okay.
Again, both the things are valid in your case also. So what is your take on this?
So, for all those that kind of have this fear, right? Trust me, I've been there. I used to get overwhelmed by code. Like, for example, I will use some words right now that maybe a lot of people may not understand from a non-technical level. Like, for example, importing a library or you like trying to create clear syntaxes for a count function. Like all of these are jargons and they're very complicated words. When you try to think of it, it's very simple things, right? Like, for example, when I used the first formula on Excel, it was VLOOKUP. I'm like, what the hell is VLOOKUP? And then I just Googled the meaning of it. And when I read it in simple English, right, I understood what it does. When I understand what it does, then it doesn't take a lot of effort for me to remember these things or maybe use them. And you always have Google to search for these things. So I would say coding is not the most important thing for you to focus on because even engineers don't really remember all the syntaxes. They just know the logic. If you understand the logic, it's more than enough. You can always Google your way. And in fact, nowadays we have ChatGPT. So to be honest, I also don't know all the syntaxes. If I struggle in my current job with some specific thing related to SQL or something related to some kind of table creation, then I just go to ChatGPT and I'm like, hey, I want to do this. Tell me how to do this. Once it gives the output, it gives me the syntaxes. I understand what I need to do. And code, again, right, like I'm from a completely non-tech background. So for me, coding should be a lot more difficult.
Correct.
But if I understand the concept, then trust me, coding is just syntaxes, just words. And the best place to always start is from Excel and SQL. SQL is just like English.
Correct. So basically, it is not going to be difficult if you try to learn it maybe step by step, starting from basics and then slowly, gradually understanding the concepts and slowly, gradually acquiring more knowledge into it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Abhilash, what is your take on the current market scenario? Again, most of the people are worried about the current market because AI is something which is hitting the market. People are worried that they will lose the job because industry is looking for more AI professionals than the data professional, or maybe they are not looking for data analysts. So, since you are working in the industry, what is your take on this particular statement?
AI. I use ChatGPT almost every day now. And I think the fear is justified. I think it's understandable. You have a system that remembers all the syntaxes. It understands all the technicalities and can give you an output probably at higher precision or more accuracy than any human being.
Correct.
But it's still a robot. There's only a certain logic it can follow, a framework. You are a human being. Your creativity is what really calls in. And I think no matter what, I don't see analytics really being dying out anytime soon or maybe getting replaced by AI. I think AI is like a co-pilot. So, in fact, if you know, there are some famous companies, like for example, GitHub, which use Copilot. Why is the word Copilot so important? Because you still need to apply yourself. You still need to analyze the data. You still need to figure out what's going on. Because when you see data, you need to tell the story. But I think technically, maybe it's going to get a lot more easier because of AI. So I would say the fear is justified. But then I think if you learn just enough of AI, like for example, if I know the right questions to ask ChatGPT, I can actually make my job a lot more easier, which means I can be faster at my job. So I would say fear of not being able to learn it. Once you learn enough of it, you can actually be a superpowered being compared to everyone else who doesn't know AI.
So basically, adopting AI as a co-pilot is the necessity
Yeah.
to secure your job and to avoid those all fears that you have.
Yes.
Okay. Now, a follow-up question: how much AI one should learn? One thing is people are developing products on top of it, and when you look at the code, people are using APIs. So I recently met one of my student, and he was very much worried because somebody showed him a Python code which was using API of ChatGPT, and it was a PDF reader. Now he was worried because he was not able to understand, though he knew how to use Python.
Okay.
So one thing is using APIs and using AI in a way to develop products on top of it. One thing is using it as a companion or a co-pilot. So if a fresher is listening to us, how much he should use and learn AI to make sure that the job market is accepting him or her and he is able to crack.
Okay. So actually, there's a person I was recently talking to about this, a good friend of mine. So a similar kind of fear, like what you just stated, right? And I would give the same advice to the freshers that I gave my friend. It's fair to be afraid of it, but instead of trying to go first for how to use AI, right? First, try to upskill yourself, understand what's happening, because the system will understand the syntaxes, it will explain you what is happening, and then you can use it. But you are the one who's telling where to use it, not the AI. So first, I would say try to train yourself. Use those skills, like understand what does a VLOOKUP do, what does a SUMIF do, what is select star from a table. Understand those things. Practice it a little bit. Don't just completely depend on AI. If you do that, you're risking yourself because tomorrow it'll get smarter than you. But that's not where you want to be, right? So instead, if you know how to fundamentally apply, like say, for example, you ask it a problem, it'll give you two options. Hey, I can do this or this. But you should be the one finally deciding. And you can only decide if you had enough practice and you know where to use what. So I would suggest start off with the basics, go step by step, do it on your own. Once you feel like you're at least better than the average, and average, again, right, like it depends from person to person, the companies you're trying to apply for, things like that. So I would say if you have put about 20, 30, 40, 50 hours maybe, or in a specific tool, and then you feel like, hey, I'm confident, I can do a VLOOKUP without understanding this, without looking at some book and mugging it, then go ahead and try to use ChatGPT or maybe any AI tool, because that will aid you. It is not going to replace you.
Great. Basically, the key is to start from the basics, make your fundamentals strong, and then probably start using AI so that you are still able to understand what AI is giving you as the output.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great advice, Abhilash. Now, as per your journey and the current role that you are working in, what tools you generally use and at what level you use them?
Okay. So I would rank SQL at the top. That is the most used tool, and SQL can be plugged into a lot of open BI tools, right? So we use Metabase at the company that I work. And then I would rank Excel. After that, I would go on to maybe some pieces like Python or maybe PySparks, which is again on Python itself. These are the three main tools that I mostly use. I also use, so even though I use Excel, Google Sheet offers a few more advantages. Sometimes I use things like JavaScript. So JavaScript again is to connect some of the BI tools like Metabase with Google Sheets just to seamlessly pull in data and push.
Basically, the app script part.
Yes, that's good. Exactly.
Great. Now, let's say if you have to hire someone in your team, what skills you will evaluate that person and what kind of attitude you will look for in that person?
Got it. So, having taken quite a few interviews recently, I think the 4 to 5 key pieces that I would look for is first is on the technical front, right? Like, is this person confident enough in SQL. And it doesn't mean that they can understand the most complex things, right? If they understand certain basic things, how to get data from a table, understand what a window function does. Maybe they don't know all the window functions because there are a lot like row number, dense rank, etc. But then if they understand how it works and they know how to use a few things, that's great. And then the second part, so we're done with the technical front. Excel and all, we don't really test a lot on because of some people already have exposure to it, and hence we kind of oversight it over time. Then the second part I would look at is this person a scalable resource? What that means is this person curious? Does this person want to know the answer? Or does this person just leave it at surface level and then stop thinking beyond that? And how we do this is also you can term it as problem solving, which is we give a problem. Is this person trying to figure out what the problem is and then try to arrive at the solution? Or just jumping into various things regarding the solution? If they're trying to do that, then we wouldn't be as confident on this person because you spend a lot of time just figuring out the solution instead of figuring out the real problem. Third piece we would look at is communication, which I think goes in a very behavioral sense where is this person maybe able to say the right sentences in English? That's fine. Most people are able to. But then we also look for what are the choices of words? So things like, are they extremely confident or cocky? If that becomes, then it's a little difficult for us to work with them. But if they are willing to learn, receptive to feedback, then we're more open to kind of considering them for that position. So yeah, these are the three main things that we kind of look for.
Great suggestion, Abhilash. So one final last question. Someone who is listening to you right now, based on your experience and based on your journey coming from BCom, non-technical, then fear of coding, then learning to code, achieving this position, getting back to cult fit as a product analyst, back to that same company. What are those suggestions that you want to give to our learners and to our viewers?
Okay. I think depend on the kind of people that are going through the course, right? Like if you're trying to upskill, hey, that's great. Actually, in fact, I think any role when you are data literate, then it's an amazing boost because that already sets you apart from the rest of the crowd. So if there's anyone who is trying to upskill, then what I would recommend is don't be too harsh on yourself. Don't try to learn the most complicated things. Try to structurally break down things into most simplest manner and learn the very basics. And that basic can be anywhere. It can be what is a row and a column for some people. The basic could be what is a VLOOKUP. For some people, the basic could be what is a pivot table. So you can start from any one of these based on how much you already know Excel. So that is my first suggestion. Second, be curious about what other people are already doing. So even if you're not in that role, see if what other analysts are doing, what are they doing? Like, how is the query written or how are they creating that Excel file? If you try to understand that, you might actually learn quite a lot from there. You might realize that you don't need 10 formulas. You just need to learn one pivot table. That's it. So that is my suggestion for anyone who's upscaling. For anyone who's just starting out or is a fresher, what I would recommend is go online and search for some places which actually test your skills. Like for example, Data Lemur or maybe HackerRank, and test yourself. See where you stand today. And then you will realize where you are. Then if you decide that you want to structurally start learning this, or if you're already good, then great, good start. Now you have to try to demonstrate your work. That's one way. Or another option is if you feel like you need to upskill, then choose a course. It can be something as simple as a free course on YouTube. It could be some paid course from Udemy, or it could be a full-fledged course from any kind of offline institute. But the idea is once you structurally learn, you know what you're applying. You're becoming more confident. A tool can be learned by anyone. It's just your confidence.
Great suggestion, Abhilash, and that was a great discussion with you. And I hope you guys also enjoyed the discussion with Abhilash. If you have any questions that you want to ask to Abhilash or to us, please feel free to drop your questions on the comment section. We will get it answered. And for more such amazing content and discussions, keep following Analytics Lab.